So now comes the fun part. We're actually gonna get ready to fill our jars and start canning. So there are a few things you wanna do before you start. You want to check your jars. You wanna make sure there are no cracks. Basically, if anything looks strange to the eye, you probably shouldn't use it. So cracks, nicks, anything that could impede the jar from properly functioning, check it. It looks good, great, good to go. You wanna look at your lids and bands. Make sure it's brand new lids, okay? Does it look okay? Is there any, is it bent? Is it dirty? You don't want your bands to be dirty. You wanna just look through, make sure everything looks clean, everything looks good to go. All right, so what you're gonna do is wash everything in warm soapy water. Wash your jars, wash your lids and bands. Once you have washed your jars and your lids and bands, you're going to dry your lids and bands and set them aside till you're ready. And your jars can actually go directly into your Waterbath canner. And next, we're going to prep everything we need for the recipe. Once you have washed your jars, your lids and bands, and have all that ready, I like to go ahead and prepare the fruits or veggies or whatever it is I am canning, because that takes time. Chopping, coring, removing seeds, doing all those things take time and takes time. And so I like to have it all ready to go so that when I'm following that recipe, I can have everything there when I need it and then just follow the steps. One thing that really has helped me is to follow the recipe and the steps the same way every time. Because the more you do that, the more it'll kind of just become a part of what you do. And it's this really, really fun process. But the more you do it the correct way and in the right steps, it'll help you do it well each time. So once I have prepped all my supplies, measured out all that I need, I am going to start warming my jars. So one thing to keep in mind with canning that's super important is you don't want to put a cold jar with something hot. So what I mean by that is, if you have heated up the content that you're going to put inside the jar, and the jar is cold and you're going hot content into cold jar, that's where you can come across an issue with the jar breaking. So what you want to do is have the jar be warm so that when you put in the hot content into the jar, it's okay. It's not gonna be a big deal. So keep that in mind. You don't ever want, anytime you're doing anything with your jars, you don't want to go from hot to cold all of a sudden, or from too cold to hot. Hopefully that makes sense, but it'll make more sense as we go along. But you turn on your Waterbath canner and you're gonna turn it on like a low to medium heat. You want the water to start doing that simmer we talked about earlier, where there's just a few bubbles and it's warming up. If you were to touch those jars, they are warm, but it is not boiling and it is not like super, super hot. You wanna keep the jars in that state until you are ready to fill them with the contents that you have prepared. My jars have been warming in the Waterbath canner, and I am now gonna show you what I do next. So always use your jar lifter, this side. You're gonna reach in, I just kinda gently turn it so the water comes out, and I'm going to put it on a wood cutting board or on a towel, not directly onto my cold surface, okay? So I have this here, this jar is warm, and now I am ready to fill it with the contents. So I'm gonna use my funnel and I'm going to fill the jar according to the recipe. This is a fresh salsa recipe, so I'm gonna fill it up to a 1/2 inch headspace. I'll show you what that is. So I've filled my jar up to the correct amount of headspace, and I remove my funnel, and then you're gonna take your measuring tool. And so for this specific recipe, again, it depends on what recipe, follow what it says. This says 1/2 inch, so here is a 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna place this little thing here, and I'm gonna go all the way around to ensure that the level of the food is right where this little end is. So that looks correct. And then the next step we want to do is remove any air that could possibly be in there. So you're going to use this side and you're going to go in on the sides and kind of pull in, go all the way around, just making sure you're clearing any air that could possibly be inside the jar, okay? And now you're ready to clean the jar. And the reason you do that is you want to make sure you have that really good seal with your lid and your band. And if this is all full of food, that can interfere with that process. So you can take a kitchen towel or a small towel and wipe it down. So you're going to go around and clean the top. And make sure it's really clean. And then you're gonna take the dried lid and band that you had washed earlier, place it on, and we're gonna do that term called fingertip tight. So you're gonna turn it to where it stops, right where it stops, and then you're just gonna do just a teeny bit past that. You don't wanna tighten it super tight, and you don't want it obviously loose all the way for it to open up. So once you are there, that jar is ready to be put back into the water bath canner. I'm going to place it down into my simmering water and then repeat that for all the jars. So you want to ensure that you only do one jar at the time. If the recipe says that your yield at the end will be 4 or 6 jars, 4, 5, 6 jars, whatever the recipe says, you don't want to take all those jars out and fill them up, do all the steps, and then put them back in. Because what that can do is by the time you go from jar 1 to jar 6, the temperature might have changed in that jar and you can cause an issue. So always make sure you're only doing one at a time. We don't do assembly line filling of the jars, just do one at a time. Once you put your last jar in, you are ready to start bringing the water to a boil, and we'll talk more about that in the next video.